All right, completing the square day two. Yesterday, hopefully you understood how to complete the square with a quadratic that has an a value of 1. Today we're going to deal with if the a value is not 1. So just to do a little review, let's see if you remember how to do this one. So try this one, pause the video. All right, and we're back. Did you get y equals x plus 3 squared minus 12? There's a little, not particularly accurate sketch, but the whole point of this is to help you graph parabolas. So you get a little graph there. All right, let's get it going. So here we have a quadratic where the a is not 1, it's 2. So our first step is we want to turn it into something that looks like the ones you did before. So let's factor out, let's undistribute that a value. So we're going to pull out the 2. So I'm going to pull out a 2 from 2x squared. That just turns into x squared. I'm going to factor out a 2 from 4. That's going to be plus 2x. Now, here's a little trick. I am not going to factor out the 2 from the 7. I'm just going to put that blank in there, and we're going to kick that 7 out. We will deal with you later, 7. So now, this turns into the kind of completing the square you did before. We need to figure out half of this b value, which is 1. We're going to square that to complete the square. That's 1. And now here's the difference. Before you would have just said, oh, I'm adding 1. Let me subtract 1 out here. Well, this isn't really a 1 now, is it? It's inside this parentheses, which would have been multiplied by 2. So that 1 is really a 2. We added 2 here. And the way we're going to balance out a 2 is we're going to subtract 2. So that's the big tricky part that students sometimes mess up on. Not you all, you're going to crush this, but you're not subtracting 1, you're subtracting 2 here because it was really 2 times 1 that you were adding in. The rest now is no problem. We keep our 2 out there. We factor x squared plus 2x plus 1, which is just x plus 1 squared. 7 minus 2 is 5. And we have completed the square. Your vertex is going to be negative 1 comma 5. And you can try graphing that on your own. It's going to be upward facing and a little narrower than normal. All right, let's try one on your own. We'll go dual so you can see both. I'll move my little floating head. Where should it go? Maybe right down here. And why don't you pause the video here and see if you can solve this one. 3x squared plus 12x minus 1. And we're back. Did you get this answer right here? And you can see a little graph down here. All right, let's keep going. What happens if you have a negative a value? Honestly, kind of the same deal. We're going to start by pulling out that negative 2. Here you have to be a little careful. If you factor out a negative 2 from a negative 12, that's actually positive 6 on the inside. I always like to redistribute in my head just to check. Negative 2 times x squared is negative 2x squared. Negative 2 times positive 6 is negative 12, so I'm doing okay. Again, I'm going to leave my blank here. I am not pulling that negative 2 out of the negative 9. I'm completing the square. Half of 6 is 3. Square that, and it's 9. And again, you might think, oh, I'm adding 9 here. I want to subtract 9 on the outside. But this was really negative 2 times positive 9, which was a negative 18, which means if we want to balance that out, if we really subtracted 18 to complete the square, we're going to add 18 right here. Finish up the problem. That was the hard step. You factor x squared plus 6x plus 9, and that turns into x plus 3 squared. And negative 9 plus 18 is positive 9. My vertex is going to be negative 3 comma 9. If I want to draw a quick little sketch here, negative 3 comma 9 is roughly here. And I know it's going to go down. I know it's going to be kind of narrow. It's probably going to be hit right around here. So there's something like what my parabola would look like. All right, how about you try one on your own right now? Try this one. Pause the video. We're back. Did you get this as the answer? 3 comma 21. Notice that positive 9 right here was actually a negative 27. And that's why you added 27 on the outside to balance it out. Here's my parabola. It's down, it's narrow. We go on. Last type I'm going to try with you all. What if there is a fractional a value? Hoo, hoo, hoo. So we do the same thing. We pull out the 1/2. 1/2 times x squared gets you that. Now, how do you pull out a 1/2 from -3? You're actually dividing -3 by 1/2. That is not 3/2. It's actually -6 here. If you don't believe me, redistribute it to make sure. 1/2 times x squared is 1/2 x squared. 1/2 times -6 is -3. So I wasn't lying. And half of -6 is -3. Squared is +9. Again, that's not really a +9 that we're adding, though. It's a positive 4.5. So we're going to subtract 4.5 right here. Or you could have done it as 9/2. We finish out the problem by completing the square. X minus 3 squared. Notice how whatever your half of your b value is what ends up being right here. And then this ends up being plus 1/2. So my vertex is going to be 3, 1/2. It's going to be upward facing parabola, and it is going to be wider than narrow. Let's have you try one practice one on your own. Pause the video, and we're back. And this one turned out like this. So I hope this makes sense to all of you. Good luck completing the square and graphing parabolas where the a value is not 1. Adios.